He walked into the White House in a black dress, sat down to lunch with the First Lady, and told the truth about a war. By the time dessert was served, her career in America was already dead.
Take my baby away from home.
It would stay dead for 10 years, and the reason why was sitting in a government file she wouldn't read until 1975.
And everybody knows about Mississippi Gone Down.
Welcome to R&B Wonders, where we tell the stories behind the songs and the singers that history tried to forget. Tonight, 10 artists who walked onto a stage, opened their mouths, and were erased for it. Number 10, Frankie Lymon, Goody Goody, 1957. He was 14 years old, and he was the biggest thing in America. Why Do Fools Fall in Love had gone around the world, and that voice, that impossible soprano, floating over doo-wop harmony, made Frankie Lymon the first black teenage superstar this country ever produced. Alan Freed put him on national television on ABC in the summer of 1957, a show called The Big Beat, prime time, coast to coast. And then the cameras caught him dancing with a white girl in the studio audience. Just dancing, that was all. But the phone started ringing before the broadcast was over, and by the next morning, Southern affiliates were threatening to pull the plug on the entire network. ABC canceled the show. Sponsors ran. Freed's career took a wound it never healed from, and Frankie, a child, became radioactive to the very industry that had built him. Here's the part almost nobody knows. Frankie Lymon's voice betrayed him next. Puberty took the exact instrument that made him famous, and by 17 he couldn't reach the notes that made him rich. He was drafted. He came home to nothing. He died in 1968 at the age of 25, in his grandmother's bathroom in Harlem, and when the money from his songs finally started flowing years later, 3 different women stepped forward, each holding a marriage certificate, each claiming to be his widow. The court fight over Frankie Lymon lasted longer than Frankie Lymon lived. And he isn't even the first man on this list who was destroyed by a single night in front of a camera. Number 9, Bo Diddley. Bo Diddley, 1955. November 20th, 1955. The Ed Sullivan Show. This was the mountaintop. One appearance on Sullivan could make a career permanent, and Bo Diddley walked in with that square guitar he built with his own hands and a rhythm he pulled out of the ground itself. The producers had a plan. They wanted him to sing 16 Tons, the Tennessee Ernie Ford hit, safe and familiar and comfortable for white America. Bo saw the cue cards, and Bo played Bo Diddley. Sullivan was incandescent. By Bo's own telling, for the rest of his life, the host cornered him afterward and told him he was the first black man who ever double-crossed him, and that he wouldn't last 6 months in this business. He never appeared on that show again. In an era when television was the only door, the door was welded shut. What almost nobody knows is that Bo Diddley wasn't some untrained street musician who got lucky.
Take my baby away from home.
He studied classical violin for 12 years as a child. 12 years of scales and bowing technique, and he could have played in a concert hall. He chose the beat instead. The one that came from Hambone and Church and the south side of Chicago, and half of rock and roll was built on top of it. He outlasted Sullivan by decades. He also spent years as a deputy sheriff in New Mexico,
Up your house and gone again.
buying patrol cars for the department out of his own pocket, because the royalties from the most imitated rhythm in American music never quite added up to what they should have.
Bo Diddley, have you heard?
He lost 6 months of momentum, Sullivan said. He actually lost a decade of television, but at least he was allowed to keep performing. The next man wasn't. Number 8, José Feliciano, Light My Fire, 1968.
Come on, baby, light my fire.
October 7th, 1968. Game 5 of the World Series in Detroit. Tiger Stadium, packed. Ernie Harwell, the beloved voice of the Tigers, had invited a 23-year-old blind Puerto Rican guitarist to sing the national anthem.
On the midnight special, come on, honey, light.
And José Feliciano walked out to the microphone with his guide dog and an acoustic guitar and did something nobody had ever done before.
My fire. Try to sing.
He sang it slow. He sang it soulful. He bent the notes like a blues singer and let the harmony breathe. And he sang it like it belonged to him.
The night on fire.
The stadium turned on him in real time. You can hear the boos rising underneath his voice on the recording. Veterans called the network in tears. Switchboards jammed. And within 48 hours, radio programmers across America quietly pulled his records off the playlist.
Oh, the time for hesitation's through.
An artist who had just won 2 Grammy Awards that year, suddenly untouchable. Here is what people forget. Every single anthem you have ever loved came out of that moment.
There's no time to wallow in.
Marvin Gaye in 1983, Whitney Houston in 1991, Jimi Hendrix the following summer at Woodstock. All of it walks through the door José Feliciano kicked open and got punished for.
Darling, we could only lose.
He took the beating so they didn't have to. And 2 years later, still shut out of American radio, he sat down and wrote a simple bilingual Christmas song that took about 2 hours to finish.
Light my fire. Oh, mama.
Feliz Navidad is now one of the most played holiday recordings on earth. The country that blacklisted him sings his song every December without knowing his name. In 2010, Detroit invited him back to sing the anthem again.
Come on, honey. Light my fire.
He sang it exactly the same way. This time, 40,000 people stood up. Some artists wait 40 years for their apology. The man at number 7 waited almost 20, and it came from an entire state government.
Try to set the night.
Number 7, Ray Charles, Georgia on My Mind, 1960. He was the biggest black entertainer in America, and he was going home. March of 1961. Bell Auditorium in Augusta, Georgia. Ray Charles had been born in Albany, Georgia, raised in poverty. Blind by 7, orphaned by 15, and he had climbed out of that state with nothing but a piano and a voice that sounded like it had been dragged through a church and a juke joint on the same night. The year before, he had recorded a slow, aching version of a song about Georgia that would go to number 1 in America and win him 2 Grammy Awards. Now he was coming back to play for his own people. Except his own people had been put in the balcony. He found out at the venue. The dance floor, the good floor, the floor where the music actually lives, was for white patrons only. Black ticket holders would be seated upstairs, looking down, and Ray Charles, who could not see the room but understood exactly what shape it was, turned around and walked back out the door. He did not play. He got in the car and left the building with the crowd still filing in. The promoter sued him. A Georgia court ruled against him and fined him roughly $757 for breach of contract, and the message went out through the entire Southern booking circuit. Number 6, Sammy Davis Jr., The Candyman, 1972. August of 1972. Miami Beach. He was 46 years old, the biggest live draw in America, and he walked onto a stage at a Nixon youth rally in front of thousands of cameras. He sang, and when the President of the United States came out behind him, Sammy Davis Jr. turned around and threw both arms around him. That was it. That was the whole thing. 3 seconds of footage, 1 photograph, and a career built over 40 years cracked straight down the middle. You have to understand what Nixon meant to Black America in 1972. Vietnam was still swallowing sons. The civil rights movement had buried its leaders, and here was the man who had marched at Selma, the man who had put his body in that line, hugging the president, who represented everything the marching was against. The picture ran everywhere. Within weeks, Sammy Davis Jr. was the most hated Black entertainer in the country. A month later, he walked on stage at a Black Expo in Chicago, an event tied to Jesse Jackson's own organization, in front of his own people, and they booed him. Loudly. For minutes. He stood there in the light and took it. He said afterward that it was the loneliest moment of his entire life, and this was a man who had been alone in a lot of rooms. Here is the part almost nobody knows. It wasn't the first time a president had done this to him. In 1960, he campaigned for John F. Kennedy, worked for him, raised money for him, and he was scheduled to perform at the inaugural gala. Then word came down quietly that his presence was a problem, because Sammy had just married a white Swedish actress, and the new administration could not afford the Southern backlash. He was asked to stay home from the inauguration of the man he had helped elect. He postponed his own wedding for the campaign, and he still didn't get in the door. He spent 12 years carrying that, and people close to him always said the Nixon hug was partly that wound talking. Nixon invited him in. Nixon flattered him. Nixon gave a man who had been turned away from the front door of American power the one thing nobody had ever offered him, which was to be wanted. Look at what he'd already survived to get there. He was raised in vaudeville from the age of 3 and never spent a full day in a classroom. In the army, he was beaten by white soldiers who painted a slur across his forehead. In 1954, driving to Los Angeles for a recording session, he lost his left eye in a car crash and came back to the stage 2 months later wearing a patch. He integrated Las Vegas casinos that had made him enter through the kitchen. He converted to Judaism. He married who he loved, when doing that could get a man killed. He apologized for the hug. He said it plainly, for years. In interviews and in his own book, that he had been used and that he understood why people were angry. It never fully came back. He worked until his voice gave out. He died in 1990 of throat cancer, and within months, his widow discovered the estate was gutted by debts and back taxes. The most successful entertainer of his generation left almost nothing behind. They auctioned off his things. Strangers bid on his jewelry, his awards, the physical evidence of a life spent making rooms full of people love him. That is exactly why this channel exists. R&B Wonders isn't here for the greatest hits. It's here for the artists the hits were built on, and the names the industry decided to punish. If Sammy's story landed on you tonight, subscribe, because these are the ones the algorithm won't push and nobody else is telling. Turn the bell on. Somebody has to keep saying these names out loud, because the next 5 are the ones that hurt. Number 5, Bobby Womack. It's All Over Now, 1964. He was 20 years old, and Sam Cooke was his mentor, his boss, his father figure, the man who signed the Valentinos and taught Bobby everything he knew about a room. Bobby and his sister-in-law wrote, "It's All Over Now," and it was climbing, and then Sam gave it to the Rolling Stones and told Bobby to be patient. The Stones took it to #1 in Britain. Bobby was furious until the first royalty check arrived, and then he understood. Sam Cooke was killed in December of 1964. The whole of Black America went into mourning. 3 months later, Bobby Womack married Sam Cooke's widow. He was 21, He has said all his life that he was trying to hold a family together, that Barbara was drowning and the children needed somebody. It didn't matter. The industry closed on him like a fist. Disc jockeys announced on air that they would never play a Bobby Womack record again. Promoters canceled him. He got threats. Sam's own brothers came for him. And in the middle of it, Barbara gave him Sam's clothes. And Bobby, being 21 and grieving and not thinking, wore Sam Cooke's suit and Sam Cooke's shoes onto a stage. The crowd nearly tore him apart. What almost nobody knows is what he did next. Frozen out of every studio door as a singer, he picked up a guitar and became a session man, an anonymous hired hand playing behind Ray Charles, Aretha Franklin, Wilson Pickett, and eventually Elvis Presley. Playing on hit after hit that carried somebody else's name, Wilson Pickett cut 17 Bobby Womack songs. 17. The man the industry banned was quietly writing half of its catalog. It took him almost 10 years to be allowed back into his own career, and he never once, in any interview, spoke a word against Sam Cooke. Number 4, Billie Holiday, Strange Fruit, 1939.
Black bodies swinging.
Cafe Society, downtown New York, 1939. The first integrated nightclub in the city. She closed every set the same way. The waiters stopped serving. The room went black except for one light on her face.
In the southern breeze.
And she sang about bodies hanging from poplar trees in the American South, in a voice so soft it made grown men put their drinks down. Her own label refused to record it.
Strange fruit hanging.
She had to go to a tiny independent to get it on wax. And that song made her a target of the United States government for the rest of her life.
From the poplar tree.
The head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, a man who despised her and everything she represented, sent agents to warn her to stop singing it. She refused. She sang it in every city, every night, for 20 years.
Pastoral scene.
In 1947, they finally got her on a narcotics charge, and here's the fact that most people never learn. It wasn't the prison time that killed her career, it was what came after.
The gallant South.
New York City required a cabaret card to perform anywhere alcohol was served, and after her conviction, hers was revoked permanently.
Bulging eyes.
For the last 12 years of her life, Billie Holiday could sell out Carnegie Hall, but she was legally barred from singing in a single nightclub in the city that made her.
And the twisted mouth.
The greatest jazz singer who ever lived, locked out of every small room in New York, watching lesser voices work the stages she built.
Scent of magnolia.
She died in 1959. She was 44 years old. There was a police guard at her hospital door because they had arrested her in the bed, and when they counted what she had left in the world, it came to about 70 cents in the bank.
Sweet and fresh.
And the money she had strapped to her leg. They took everything from her except the song, and the song is still here.
In the sudden smell.
Number 2, Nina Simone, Mississippi Goddamn, 1964.
Alabama's got me so upset.
She wrote it in under an hour. Medgar Evers had been murdered in his driveway. 4 little girls had been killed in a church basement in Birmingham.
Tennessee made me lose my rest.
Nina Simone sat at her piano in a rage she said felt like wanting to kill somebody. And instead, she wrote the angriest, catchiest, most terrifying show tune in American history. A bouncing little melody with a lyric that named the states by name.
Nobody knows about Mississippi gone down.
She played it at the Village Gate. She played it at Carnegie Hall to a room full of white liberals who laughed at the opening, thinking it was a joke, and then stopped laughing. Southern radio stations didn't just refuse to play it. Promotional copies came back to the label snapped clean in half, returned in the same box they arrived in, and from that moment forward,
I know you can feel it.
the woman who had been a genuine crossover pop star was systematically frozen out of American commercial radio. She never had another mainstream hit in her own country.
It's all in the air.
She left Barbados, then Liberia, then Switzerland, then the Netherlands, then a small town in the south of France. There were years where the greatest singer of her generation was performing in half-empty piano bars for scale.
I can't stand the pressure much longer.
There were years the phone didn't ring at all. She struggled with an illness nobody around her understood at the time, and she was, by every account of the people who loved her, profoundly alone.
Somebody say a prayer.
Here's what almost nobody knows. When she was 17, Nina Simone auditioned for the Curtis Institute of Music in Philadelphia to become a classical concert pianist.
Alabama's got me so upset.
That was the only dream she ever really had. They rejected her, and she believed until her dying day it was because she was black. In 2003, Curtis awarded her an honorary degree.
Governor Wallace has made me lose my rest.
She learned about it 2 days before she died.
About Mississippi gone down.
Number 1, Eartha Kitt. Santa Baby, 1953.
Santa baby, an out-of-space convertible.
January 18th, 1968. A women's luncheon at the White House about crime in America, hosted by Lady Bird Johnson. Eartha Kitt was 40 years old, a global superstar, a woman who sang in 4 languages and had been called the most exciting woman in the world.
Light blue.
She was invited because she actually worked with kids in the streets of Washington, so when they asked her opinion, she gave it. She said the boys were rebelling because they were being sent to be shot and maimed in Vietnam, and that a mother didn't care about a crime bill when her son was coming home in a box.
And I'll wait up for you, dear Santa baby.
The room froze. The First Lady's eyes filled with tears, and Eartha Kitt went home and discovered that her entire American career had ended between one course and the next.
And hurry down the chimney tonight.
Bookings evaporated overnight. Television dropped her. Clubs that had begged for her wouldn't return calls. For roughly a decade, she could barely work in her own country, and she survived by taking her act to Europe and Asia, where nobody cared what she'd said over lunch.
Think about.
And then in 1975, a newspaper investigation revealed why. The government had been keeping a file on her. Pages of it. Surveillance, interviews with people who knew her, and language describing her as a sadistic nymphomaniac with a shady past.
The fun I missed. Think of all the fellas.
She read it and she wept, not because of the insults, but because she finally understood that the phone had stopped ringing on purpose. You have to understand where she started, to know what they took. She was born on a cotton plantation in South Carolina in 1927.
That I haven't kissed. Next.
Her mother's new husband wouldn't accept her because her skin was too light, so her mother gave her away. She was sent to relatives who beat her. She never knew her father's name. She built the most glamorous career on earth out of a childhood that had told her, over and over, that nobody wanted her.
Here I could be, oh so good.
And then one day she told the truth about somebody else's sons, and her own country told her the same thing all over again. She came back. Broadway in 1978.
If you'll take off my Christmas.
And a standing ovation on opening night that reportedly went on so long she couldn't start. A dance floor hit in the 1980s. A whole new generation who knew her as a purring cartoon villain and had no idea what she'd survived.
Santa honey, I want a yacht.
Eartha Kitt died on December 25th, 2008. Christmas Day. The woman who sang Santa Baby, gone on the one morning of the year when her voice is playing in every house in America.
And really that's not a lot.
She was rejected at birth, rejected by her country, and she outlived every single person who tried to make her disappear.
Been an angel, oh dear, Santa honey.
10 artists, 10 nights that cost them everything, and every one of them was punished for the same crime. which was refusing to be smaller than they were. If you knew one of these stories, tell somebody the other 9. That's the only way a name survives.
And hurry down the chimney tonight.